Right. Episode... Oh, wait. About to take a drink. Okay. I managed to get through the entirety of the show without boiling over with emotions. I still haven't gotten the chance to speak to Angela in private. Judging by the evil looks Neil has been giving her, he wants to talk to her too. I still need to give her a piece of my mind though. After the show is over, we make our way back to the parking lot as we're heading out to a restaurant for dinner. Neil leaves with his parents. I'm with Angela. Angela, you have some serious explaining to do, I say once we're both seated inside. Whatever do you mean? It was a lovely performance, was it not? She says, feigning innocence. Angela, don't be like that. I'm really angry that you pulled me into this without even giving me a heads up. Oh, don't be dramatic. I invited you over for a show and a dinner. It's not the end of the world. Angela starts the car and we're on our way. It is when the purpose of this was to get me to meet Neil's parents for some kind of scheme. They think I'm dating Neil. That's not all right with me. For being as outspoken as you are right now, I didn't really see you kicking up a fuss in front of his parents, though. Could it be that you are secretly okay with it? I tried to kick up a fuss, actually, and you stopped me from doing so. I'm not okay with it. I just didn't want to be rude. Angela, I really am upset about this, and so is Neil. Did you know he approached me a couple of weeks ago? He told me to stay away from him. You know why he said this? Because he didn't want you dragging me into this. Because he didn't want you dragging me into madness like this. Angela stays quiet, keeping her eyes on the road. No need to blow a gasket here, dear. It's just for one dinner. That's all I'm asking for. But you didn't even ask me, I fire back. Look, drastic times call for drastic measures. If you can get through this one dinner, Neil's parents will get off his back. I will not let Neil work himself to death. Work with me here. Don't fail me now. I have high hopes for you. Angela pushes down on the gas pedal to speed up the car. I'm in a whirlwind of questions right now. We arrive at the restaurant with Neil and his parents joining in afterwards. It's a fancy-looking place, richly decorated with staff wearing traditional uniforms. One of them greets us. Welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Forrester. How is your evening? The waiter definitely seems familiar with them. Right this way, please. Your table is waiting for you. The waiter starts to walk. The waiter leads us to a large table with a ton of cutlery neatly arranged. This is one of those fine dining restaurants. While I've been to maybe a couple, I feel like I'm going to mess up on which utensil to use while eating. I'm about to grab the chair to sit down when Neil pulls it out in front of me. Ooh. I look into his eyes. There's probably a giant question mark hovering above my head right now. He's pulling out chairs for me now. I take it he's putting on an act, so I sit down as elegantly as I can and give him a delightful fake smile. I can't believe I have to do this. Thank you, I say. I hope my sarcasm isn't dripping from my words. Neil nods at me and takes a seat next to me, staying silent all this time. Angela is seated next to him. She seems to be quite pleased with herself, and Neil's parents sit opposite of me, looking as if they've been regulars at this restaurant for years. What would you like to drink this evening, madam? The waiter asks me. Some sparkling water would be nice, I answer. I almost regret it. Alcohol might have made this situation more bearable. Everyone else except for Neil all order white wine. I slightly wonder if Angela should even be drinking now. She already sounded tipsy before, and she's my ride home. There's a lull in conversation, and I can feel the eyes of Neil's parents staring at me like I'm some kind of science experiment. It's really uncomfortable. I distract myself by opening up the menu card. There's 2 pieces of paper glued to the inside of the brown binder, both pages filled with only 4 choices, each a 7-course menu. Right, fine dining means tiny food portions. There's the fish, pork, beef, and vegetarian menu. I'll quickly make a random choice. We all take our orders, and I hope I won't be getting served anything strange like boiled snails or something. I look down at the cutlery. There's so many knives and forks, I'm not quite sure what it's all used for. Neil suddenly leans in closer to me, his sleeve brushing up against me. Work from the outside in, he whispers to me, and he gestures towards the utensils. I half expected him to throw an insult my way for not knowing the proper etiquette and comparing my intelligence to that of a baby. Elegance to that of a baby. This is the last time I'm going to eat in a place like this, I whisper back to him with a forced smile on my face. I am in complete agreement with that, he whispers with a scoff. Don't be keeping secrets from us like that. Share it with the rest of the table, says Evelyn, who noticed us whispering to each other. I sit up straight in embarrassment for being called out, and so does Neil. Oh, let these lovebirds have their private conversations. I bet they're just saying the sweetest words to each other, says Angela. I shoot her a glare. She's so going to get chewed out later for all of this. Now I realize why Neil warned me about her shenanigans. They're completely insane proposals. I look back at Neil's parents and I can't bring myself to tell them, hey, actually, I'm just pretending to be into your son here. It's all an act. That will make it even more awkward than it already is. Besides, I sort of told Neil I was okay with keeping this facade going. The drinks arrive and Angela immediately drinks almost all of her wine. We all stay silent and I wonder if I should say something, but Evelyn beats me to the punch. So, Valkii, designing these dresses is a hobby of yours? Evelyn asks. I'm a bit offended at that. No, it is my passion and my life's work, I reply honestly. Neil starts nervously fiddling with his fork, balancing it on his finger and refusing to look at anyone or speak. Is that so? Is all Evelyn says. What did you study at the university? Marcus joins the conversation. Neil tenses up when Marcus starts to speak. I feel like I'm being picked and prodded at with a stick. This is uncomfortable for me as well. I went to the Art Institution of Kleiner, and I got a bachelor's in fashion there. Ah, another art school. Marcus looks at Neil as he says this. A waste of time and money. I frown at the man. Why would he call it a waste? Neil keeps tapping the spoon against the table, going faster and faster until it launches out of his hand. With a soft clink, it lands in between my chair and Neil's. I can feel it touch my heel, so I bend down to pick it up. At the same time, Neil tries to reach for the spoon as well, and we softly bump our heads against each other. His eyes are wide and staring into my own, our fingers slightly touching. My heart starts to beat faster, nerves overrunning my body. We're so close we could sneak a kiss behind this table. Excuse me, Neil mumbles. He closes his eyes, then leans even closer, his black hair brushing against the side of my cheek. For a second, I really think he's going to kiss me, but instead he lifts the spoon from the ground. Slowly, Neil sits up straight again and places the spoon down on the table. I gulp and straighten my back up as well. Stop being so clumsy, boy, Marcus says with a grunt. Neil tenses up and he immediately hangs his head down in response. He's so meek. It's so weird to see Neil off his game. I guess they didn't teach you how to use your utensils in art school. Wow, he sounds so high and mighty. I'm annoyed by that comment, as well as his previous comment about art school being a waste of time and money. I give him a snide and cool look, unable to keep my mouth shut. Well, isn't it the parents' job to teach their child table manners? I ask nonchalantly. Neil winces and twitches in response, and he turns to me with fear in his eyes. Marcus's expression changes as he glowers at me, crossing his arms across his chest. Are you insinuating that I haven't taught my son any manners? His voice is thick and threatening. Well, it's pretty obvious Neil has the manners of a teaspoon, so yeah, I am implying this. No, I don't think anyone here is saying that, and Valky's bachelor's isn't a waste to Marcus. She owns her own boutique and even made this dress for me. Marcus gives Angela a dirty look, but clamps down his mouth and refuses to speak any further. And for once it makes you look like an elegant young lady, says Evelyn. Sometimes you show off too much skin, my dear. A lady should dress more modest, like Valkii here. On one side I have someone calling my bachelor's a waste, on the other side I have someone praising my work. It's all a bit strange and I desperately want to escape from talking about myself. I look towards Neil for support, but he looks even more out of his element than before. Great, can't count on him. Seems Neil caves under his parents' pressure. A little skin never hurt anybody. Besides, I think Neil likes to see a little bit of skin, says Angela, and she winks at me. I kind of want to die right now, and I can feel Neil growing uncomfortable as well. I managed to catch him knocking his knee hard against Angela's under the table to get her to quit making those comments. Anyways, let's drink. Let's drink to Valkii and Neil, who are getting married. Angela raises her glass of wine. I wish the ground could swallow me right now. This is getting too much to bear. I have the weirdest fake-looking grin on my face. It's a miracle no one can see the obvious discomfort written on it. Just pretend for one dinner. It should be fine. You can do it. Raise that glass. I take my glass and slowly raise it, seeing Neil do the same. Neil turns his head to look at me. To us, he says weakly. For some reason, that makes my heart beat faster. I know it's fake, but hearing him toast to our fake marriage is kind of giving me some very strange feelings. We all clink our glasses together. The dinner runs without many hiccups. Evelyn keeps barraging me about myself, firing question after question, whereas Marcus hasn't really said anything anymore after he berated Neil for his manners. Neil has been completely quiet during this whole meal as well, only sometimes responding with one-syllable words. It's so strange to see him like this, so meek and quiet. I'm not used to this Neil. It's really odd. On the other hand, the one thing that felt very much the same still is Angela, who has been getting more and more tipsy. The tipsier she gets, the more she teases us about being a couple. She comes up with a fantasy scenario for us, of us going out on dates to museums and whatnots, describing it with way too much detail. It's awkward, to say the least. By the time we're all done with our desserts, Angela is clearly too drunk to drive, so Neil offers to drive her home instead. "It was very nice meeting you, Valkii," says Evelyn. "Do let us know when you can join us again. I would love that." I simply smile at her, knowing full well there won't be a next time. I had a very nice evening. Thank you very much for inviting me. "Valkii," says Neil all of a sudden. I turn to face him. It's so strange to look at him now we've been sitting side by side this entire time, hearing about our fake romantic escapades. "I'll drive you home." "Ah, alright." Obviously Angela is in no state to be driving. We all bid our goodbyes to Neil's parents, and we all managed to get inside Angela's car without much protesting from Angela. I sit in the passenger seat next to Neil, looking at him as he grips the steering wheel with his hands. Just like me, Neil's on edge, and we're both pretty displeased with Angela's actions. Speaking of Angela, she's singing songs in the backseat of the car. Love songs, to be exact. "For what it's worth, I think you two make a very convincing couple," she says with a giggle. Oh, so not comfortable. "You and I will be having a very serious discussion when you sober up," says Neil with a chill in his voice. "I won't be letting you off the hook." "Ah, come on, lighten up, Neil. Your parents loved her. Oh, well, Evelyn did. Marcus was a grump, but he's always a grump. Grumpy grump." Angela starts to slur her words. "Angela, why don't you close your eyes and get some rest?" I ask, begging for her to stay silent. Angela doesn't seem to quite listen to me and continues to sing random love songs, but at least she's not making any strange comments. My eyes glance over towards Neil, seeing him look so serious as he stares at the road. I know he asked me to play along after all, but I wonder what he thinks of this entire situation. My thoughts drift back to Angela's fake dates, and I start to wonder what it would be like to date Neil for real. I try to imagine where Neil would take me out. I'm pretty sure he'd take me to an expensive restaurant such as this one as well, and would probably open car doors for me. I snicker at myself. That would be really strange to see. Then again, it felt kind of nice when Neil pulled out the chair for me. It's an old and outdated custom, but it's strangely satisfying to see that Neil would try to make an impression on someone. Or at least, I think he would try. Eventually, we arrive at Angela's apartment, and Neil goes upstairs with her to make sure she doesn't sleep outside of her own front door. I anxiously await Neil to come back. We'll be alone again. I guess now would be the time I won't be seeing Neil anymore. He did say he'd promise I won't be hearing from him again after tonight. The thought leaves me sad. I need to speak to him about this. Neil is back before I know it, startling me when he opens the car door. He sits down with a heavy sigh, placing his hands on the wheel again. "I really do apologize for tonight, for Angela," he says as he starts the car. I slowly nod my head. I know it's not his fault that Angela did something like this. "Your parents aren't too bad," I say. Then I remember what his father said about art school. "You went to art school too, right? For your interior design." Angela mentioned it as well before. Angela blabs too much. Well, can't disagree with that. "Did you ever end up finding work for it?" I decide to ask. "No," is Neil's simple and curt answer. He shifts around in his seat. "I started an internship at the hospital straight after graduation. My father wanted me to follow in his footsteps and learn on the job as soon as possible." "Oh, that's kind of sad," I say without thinking. "It is what it is," he says. I guess his father wasn't too keen on him studying interior design and wanted him at the hospital right away. "Do you think your hours will get cut after this dinner?" Neil shrugs. "Can't be too sure of anything. If it were up to my mother, she'd have me work 1 day a week, but it's all up to my father." I wanted to disagree with him right there and say he actually has a choice in whether or not he wants to work for his father, but I decide to keep silent. "Your mother seems nice. At least I can be honest about that. A bit privy to information, but nice." "Sounds like someone I know," says Neil with a snort. Are you talking about me?" I say indignantly. "Who else sticks their nose into somebody else's business as much as you do?" "No, I don't," I mutter. "That would be Angela." I say that last part quietly. Neil doesn't respond to that, except puts his hand on the stick to shift it into a gear. We stay silent for a while, keeping our eyes on the road. "That watch you broke," says Neil all of a sudden. "It was a gift from Angela for my graduation." "Oh, that makes sense, I guess." Angela seems to have been born into a rich family as well. I'm a bit surprised that Neil volunteered to share this piece of information with me. It's almost as if we're having an actual conversation. She had high hopes that we'd be working closely together at the same firm. Unfortunately, life didn't work out that way. Neil seems sad as he says this, like he's reminiscing past memories that never came to fruition. I'm intrigued on one side, and on the other side I'm worried what will happen when we reach my house. That's too bad, I say. At least I realized my dream. I can't imagine being forced to do something else that isn't even related. Forced? I'm unsure if that's the right word for this situation. However, I have been forced to work at times, or should I say, hounded until I gave in. Neil sighs out loud. Actually, do you remember the day I walked into your boutique for the first time? How could I forget? You mistook me as a boy in one of my childhood pictures. Neil shoots me a dirty look. Disregarding that, I was there by pure accident. My father's secretary was following me the entire time, yapping about some meeting I should have been attending. She drove me mad, that woman, still does. I figured I needed to devise a way to get rid of her. I tried to piece together the puzzle. Neil had seemed anxious that day when he entered. So you mean to say you were in my boutique that day because you were hiding from her? I wouldn't exactly call it hiding, says Neil begrudgingly. I would definitely call it hiding, I correct him. Neil glances at me again and I expect him to retort with something like I'm used to, but this time he chuckles. I suppose I was. I'm at a loss of words at the moment, seeing him laugh so earnestly with me, it's making my heart clench up. I want to see all these different sides of Neil that he never shows. They're all so interesting. It resonates strongly within my heart. I don't want to stop seeing him. Neil? I call out, awkwardly fiddling with my fingers. Since, the worst part has already happened, I doubt Angela can play any more tricks on us. Do you still want to... Neil turns the wheel. We've arrived at my street. Do I still want to what? He asks. The car rolls to a stop. It's dark outside, only a few streetlights are on. We're the only ones here. I look down at my hands. Do you still want to stop seeing me? I manage to say out loud. I hold my breath. Neil exhales slowly, rubbing his hands on the steering wheel like he's afraid to let go. He squeezes his eyes shut, then turns off the engine and opens his car door. Get out. I'll walk you to your door, he says while getting out of the car. He's completely ignoring my question, but I quickly get out of the car as well, nervous about what he's going to do. I feel like I'm going to get rejected. I shakily hold my purse close to my body as I watch as Neil makes his way around the car to approach me. Neil brushes his fingers through his black hair as he stands next to me in front of my boutique. His eyes are cast downwards, refusing to meet mine. I can feel my heart thump loudly in my chest as I start to walk towards my front door, with Neil following me behind. We both stop at the door. I can only remember what happened last time, but this time I'm scared it's going to be the opposite. I turn to face him, but neither of us can look each other in the eye. Neil, I say softly, please answer me. Isn't it better this way? Is it? I question. You just spent the entire night pretending to be my fiancé, entertaining my parents with the idea that I might actually have someone who tolerates me enough to marry me. Neil finally looks at me. And you don't think it's smarter if we simply never see each other again to avoid such disasters as tonight? And didn't I say I'm an adult who can make their own decisions? I protest. I can handle disasters. I stare at him. Besides, is that really what you want? Can you really look at me and say you don't want to see me anymore? Neil's eyes shift to the left and right, unable to look me in the eye. He's fidgeting too much, like he's nervous. Valkii, don't, says Neil, and he catches my gaze. Don't make me waver in my decision. Why not? I ask innocently. Neil gives me a conflicted look. He probably doesn't know what to do either. So, 'cause we're fierce, we're spicy. Feeling bold enough, I lean closer to him and reach for his hand. My fingers slide across his open palm until I've got a firm grip on it. I press my body closer and I can feel him react to me, but he doesn't seem to be rejecting my advances. No, I can feel him close his fingers around mine, grasping me tightly. Neil looks so good in a tuxedo, it's making me realize that my attraction for Neil is growing stronger. I raise my other arm up so that I can reach Neil's black hair. It's gotten longer, I say softly. I twirl a lock of black hair around my finger. Neil's arm is suddenly wrapped around my waist ever so slightly. Don't, he murmurs softly. Finally, I lay my head against his chest, our bodies molding together, and I whisper, Are you wavering yet? Neil breathes out a breath he's been holding Then he buries his face into my hair, using his arm to pull me into a warm embrace. I can hear his heart beat fast against my ear. Dirty tactics, he mumbles. He tightens his embrace and I cling onto him as well, feeling excitement run through my body. Cheater, he murmurs against my ear. We stay like that for a bit, bodies unable to separate from one another, simply enjoying this pleasant warmth filling up our bodies. I've been waiting for this embrace, been waiting to touch him again after that day he told me to stop seeing him. I feel so much better in his arms. I'm a fool, Neil sighs as he nuzzles his nose into my hair. It's giving me goosebumps. Really good goosebumps. The moment is cut short as Neil finally distances himself away from me, taking all his warmth with him. I feel naked without his embrace. I need to bid you a good night, he says in a stiff tone. Even under the dark of night, I can faintly see some traces of a pink hue on Neil's cheeks. You still haven't answered me, I point out. I haven't gotten an actual response from him. Neil bows his head. Regardless if I want to see you or not, it seems to have no bearing on whether or not I will actually see you. What's that supposed to mean? Neil shrugs with a smirk. It means eventually I'm going to see you whether I liked you or not. I put my finger into his chest. That's still not an answer. Can't you just say a simple yes or no, Mr. Simple and Clean? When you walk away, you don't hear me say... Oh, Jesus Christ. There's a hand on the side of my waist and suddenly Neil brings me in close. Our bodies bump into each other, his hips grind into mine. I cling onto his back for support. Neil lowers his head and kisses my lips. Whoa, Neil is being bold. I'm caught off guard. I respond to his kiss, lightly sucking on those warm lips that I've missed. I've missed them so much I can't even put it into words. I press myself closer to him and he responds to my enthusiasm with his own, caressing my back with his hand and licking the rims of my lips. Is there going to be like CGs in the DLC stuff? I'm just going to have to try and ignore that, aren't I? I suck hard on his lips, so hard it's like I pulled out a groan from his throat because his voice vibrates deep inside of me. We finally part and I don't cut eye contact with him. His eyes are only half open. I'm mesmerized. Does that answer your question? He says in this out-of-breath voice. I want to say it raises up way more questions than it answers, but at the moment I feel too weak in my knees to be able to explain anything properly. Bashfully, I nod my head at him. It's good enough for now. I bring my fingers to my lips and lightly touch them. They're still tingling, but I know the night must come to an end, so I reluctantly take a step backwards. Alright, good night, Neil, I say. Neil bows away and quickly retreats to his car, and he's gone before I know it. My feelings for Neil are such a mess right now. No, come on, you like him. We like him. I swear there's only like 25 chapters. My fate with Neil is still a bit unclear since that day. He never came right out with it, that he wanted to continue to see me. All he did was kiss me, which I guess sort of let me know that Neil at least has some feelings for me. But what those feelings are, I don't know. Even my own feelings are an enigma to me. All I know is I long to see him again and run my fingers through his black hair and press my lips against his. He's become like a drug to me, something I cannot get enough of. For several days I hear nothing. Everything is still unclear and up in the air. Then a week passes and I decide to finally pull the trigger and text Neil first. I fiddle around with my phone and send a text to him asking if going to dinner with his parents has paid off and if he has to work less. It takes 8 hours before I get a reply to that. No. That's all it says. Get the gun. Get the gun. I feel a bit cheated out of that answer. I went through that entire ordeal and Neil's office hours weren't even cut down. In the end, putting up that whole charade in front of his parents didn't even matter. Thinking about it irritates me. All that for nothing. I haven't heard anything from Angela either. I'm not sure how to initiate contact with her since we didn't really leave each other on good terms. I'm still mad at her using me like that. Maybe I can simply swing by and see if she's there to talk things through. So that's what I do. I head over to Angela's apartment. As I ring the doorbell, I hear a lot of noise inside the apartment. Well, Angela certainly seems home, but it sounds like she might be busy. Perhaps I should have called before coming over. The door opens and Angela's face pops up. She looks confused and her hair is disheveled. Valkii, she says. I wince at the smell of alcohol coming from her mouth. What are you doing here? Okay, Angela definitely seems to be drunk at 1 p.m. I came over to talk, I say. Now I feel a bit hesitant. Maybe I should come back some other time. Angela suddenly grabs me by the wrist and pulls me inside the apartment. For being drunk, she sure has a lot of strength. I stumble inside. The place looks a mess. The once impeccable apartment now has magazines lying on every piece of furniture, chairs not pushed under the table, vases lying down on the floor. What happened here? I ask in shock. Did someone break in? Oh, I have a bit of a creative block, Angela hiccups, so that's why I need to get a little chaotic with my environment. She has a glass of wine in her hands and lifts it up. This is a great choice of poison to get my creative juices running again. I grab the glass from her hands. I think that's enough, Angela. I can't bear to see Angela like this, completely wasted in her own home. Angela gives me an undignified look and she wobbles a bit on her feet. I wasn't finished with that, she protests weakly. I'll come back some other time, okay? How about you go rest? I try to persuade her. She seems really drunk. More often do I encounter Angela drunk like this. It's getting worse. But how do you even get someone to realize they need to stop drinking so much? Suddenly, Angela is pulling me by my wrist down onto the couch with her. There's no need to leave, darling. Stay, have a drink. I'll pass. I keep the glass of wine away from her and try to stand up from the couch. Why are you in a rush to leave? Have I done something wrong? Whines Angela. I bite my lip to prevent myself from saying yes. We can talk tomorrow or something, when you're sober and can actually have an adult discussion. Are you saying I'm not an adult? Angela snaps at me. Just because I'm drunk out of my mind doesn't mean I'm not an adult. That's not what I'm saying, Angela, I sigh. There's plenty of things I want to say, just not now. Angela crosses her arms and looks away from me. Go ahead, say it. I know you want to tell me all about how irresponsible I am, how I set you up to meet Neil's parents. She looks at me again, this time her eyes are tearing up. I know you want to say I make horrible and childish decisions, that I don't care about what other people might want or not. But I do care, she yells. I care so much I don't know what to do when someone I love is in pain. I can't make the pain go away with a simple wish. I can only do so much. I look down at her, sympathetic to her rant. In her own way, Angela has been trying to look out for Neil. She's just not very elegant about it and trying to create shortcuts to fix a problem that is much more complex than it seems. What am I supposed to do? I see him growing more miserable with each day, wasting his youth on a stuffy old hospital. I can't bear it. Is that why you're drinking here in the afternoon? I ask her. Do you feel guilty about your actions? I don't want to muddy our relationship with what I've done, says Angela. I do enjoy having you around as a friend. And I enjoy having you as a friend, I say with a smile. But this isn't the best time to talk about this. Why don't you rest up, take a nap? I finally get up from the couch. Angela tries once more to keep me down by grabbing my wrist, except this time her coordination is even more unbalanced, so she misses completely and grabs nothing but air. Her entire body topples forward with her momentum until I can't do anything but watch in horror as her head lands right on the edge of the coffee table. Angela! Angela lies unconscious on the floor in a small pool of blood. Help? I'm looking at the names up there. Roy, James, Calvin, Charlie. Is Calvin one of the guys' names? James is one of the guys' names. Is Roy? I just wondered if that's like a little Easter egg. Things are hectic, unpredictable, and chaotic. I find myself simply staring at the closed door of the room that Angela is staying in. The hospital had to admit her for the night and monitor any changes in behaviour to see if her concussion has gotten worse. They said it looked worse than it really was. Angela was only unconscious for a couple of minutes, but that's mostly because she was also heavily drunk. I'm fiddling with my thumbs, sitting on a bench in the hallway, looking as people pass me by. Neil is in the room with Angela. He arrived about 15 minutes ago and still hasn't come out. I'm still shaken up from everything. Seeing Angela on the floor like that was pretty terrifying. I panicked but managed to call the emergency number as well as notify Neil. He came as soon as she was admitted, luckily already being at the hospital. I can only imagine what's going on. Neil looked distressed and pissed off at the same time when he came in. God, I don't ever want to go through something like that again, I say with a sigh. It's been almost half an hour now, and the door finally opens. Neil walks out and closes it behind him with an exasperated sigh. My eyes follow him as he sits down next to me. He hangs his head down as he leans on his knees. How is she? Sobered up? I ask. For the most part, she doesn't seem to be saying anything deranged aside from her usual nonsense. They need her to stay the night, I say. I know. Neil runs a hand through his black hair. How did this even happen? I don't know. She was drunk when I saw her, tried to get up from the couch, fell over, and this is the result. The only brain damage she's sustaining is the one she's inflicting on herself with that godforsaken alcohol, says Neil bitterly. I don't really know what to say, so I say nothing instead, and I gently place a hand on Neil's back. I can feel him tense up at my sudden touch, but then he sighs once more and relaxes a bit. Neil looks up at me. How can you save someone from themselves? I lower my eyes and stare at the floor. I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I don't know how to help Angela kick off her bad habit of not getting drunk. She'd probably laugh at my attempts to hide her bottle of wine. But it seems her alcoholism is also fueled by her inability to help out Neil, whom she feels fiercely protective of. You don't, I say hesitantly. They have to help themselves. People are stubborn like that. I give him a knowing look, like someone I know. Neil brushes off my hand and gives me an undignified look. He then continues to brood in silence. When did she start drinking so much? I ask. I can't even remember. It's been like this for a long time, always drinking as much as she can at parties. However, it wasn't until after her graduation that I started encountering her drunk more often. I don't know why. Stress? Grief from her father passing away? It could be anything. I didn't know her father is deceased. Neil leans back against the wall, looking up at the fluorescent lamps of the hospital. He's silent for a minute. It was a long time ago, he says softly. I think Angela turning into alcohol as a crutch has more to do with Neil than with her deceased father, though, or at least at the moment it does. I think Angela's bad habit of getting herself drunk might also have something to do with you, I admit. Neil raises his eyebrows at me before lowering them again. What's that supposed to mean? She's worried about you. Even this entire scheme she cooked up with us being engaged, it was all a ploy so that you would have more time off work. I sigh deeply. I'm beginning to understand Angela a little more, despite disapproving of her alcohol habits. She has her own demons she's fighting. I think she's frustrated seeing you like this, so she drinks more than necessary. A long silence stretches out and I watch the nurses and doctors pass by us with an unfocused gaze. I look back at Neil next to me and he has such a painful expression on his face, like he's bottling everything up. How can she be so stupid? Says Neil, his voice wavering with emotions, always concerning herself with me. That's just Angela's way of showing her affection, I say with a slight shrug and smile. His eyes flash over towards me. Stupid like you. A comment like that would have set me off before, but considering the precarious situation we're in, I can only take it as a compliment instead. Are you alright missing out on work? I decide to ask. Neil was already at the hospital when it happened, so he was here on the scene pretty quick. At a certain point, they'll notice I'm gone, and I'll have another annoying secretary on the lookout for me. I can hide you, I say. Neil snorts. How? I could put a bag over your head. Haha. A short burst of laughter comes out of Neil. He then folds his arms and shakes his head at me. There's a slight smile on his lips and it makes me happy I got him to relax a bit. I think they would notice such an obvious sham. Happy that he's at least entertaining my joke, I scoot a bit closer to him. I can print out someone else's photo and stick it on the bag so no one can recognize you. You'll fool them all, pretending to be someone else. It would be a nice change of pace to not be myself, says Neil in a softer voice. Realizing what he said, he quickly scrambles to correct himself. I mean, clearly I live a magnificent life, but I wouldn't mind being able to dodge those secretaries. Relax, your majesty. I know what you meant to say when you... I know what you meant to say. You wish you could escape your responsibilities. Even I do sometimes. What kind of responsibilities would you even have, having to count the number of customers that enter your store? A whole 4, so much stress, he mocks. I glare at him. I get way more than 4 customers a day, I say defensively. Angela doesn't count, he points out. She's a legit customer. So, you are agreeing that you only get 4 customers a day? What? No, I'm not. Don't twist my words around. If you're only getting 4 customers a day, then you should market yourself better. Spend some money on advertising, make seasonal clothing, give discounts to returning customers, and for God's sake, get a business card already. You don't even own a website. I can feel my cheeks starting to blush. Neil's right, I haven't done most of those things. With Sarah, I've done a few photo shoots and handed the pictures out as flyers, but that's all the advertising I've done. I've kept putting it off to make my own website, that eventually I was simply making excuses and procrastinating. But the pride inside of me refuses to admit that Neil's right, so I turn my head away from him to hide my embarrassment. How would you even know I don't have a website? I mutter. Obviously, I had to find out exactly who was making my blazer. I checked every single combination of words I could think of, but got no hits in any search engine. The most I could find was your company listed in the local business registry. Nothing else, no social media or pictures of you. I whip my head towards him again. What are you doing looking for pictures of me online? I demand to know. Neil's face slowly starts to turn red. I wasn't. You just said you tried every combination in a search engine to look for my pictures. Who would waste their time looking for pictures of you online? Apparently you just admitted to it. I admitted to no such thing, don't think so highly of yourself. I was merely looking for information about your boutique. Why would I even care about you personally? There's another one of those comments again, the immediate deflection whenever Neil gets heated up. I'm starting to understand him a little bit more now, so I manage not to get all riled up. Still brings up an urge to punch him in the face, though. Why don't you try being honest with yourself for a change? You can't look me in the eye and say you don't care about me personally. I give Neil a serious look, and when his eyes meet mine, he bashfully turns his gaze elsewhere. He bites down on his lips. Fine, I do care, he says softly, but it's different right now. I didn't know you back then. His readiness to admit he cares about me right now makes my heart thump unexpectedly. I want to remember this moment, so I slowly lean my head against his shoulder and take out my cell phone. I hold it out in front of me and turn the camera towards the both of us. Smile, I say. Huh? Good one. I swear I'm gonna have to look at my playthrough and try and find this, because I swear like the art is better, maybe. Neil, you look ridiculous. I start laughing uncontrollably. Neil is making a super funny expression in the picture, his eyes half open and his mouth pulled into this weird snarl. It's too funny. Then don't suddenly take pictures of me, he growls at me. Delete that. I mean, what in the world is going on with your eye there? Does it always do that? Delete it, now! No way, let's take one more then. That's cute. I look at the result. This time Neil isn't blinking. No, the picture captured his shy expression instead. He looks uncomfortable and slightly embarrassed. I'm definitely keeping both of these pictures. You had your fun, now delete them. I actually want to, this is not... How do I get rid of this? I actually don't know. Oh, you can make it black. Okay, there's no way to get rid of this, apparently. Okay. I quickly upload it to my social media. And I got my mouse on the page now. Did you just upload that picture? There, you said you couldn't find any pictures of me online, and now there's at least one. And secretly, I also did it because I sort of wanted a picture of us together. Why do I have to be in there too? He says in an irritated tone. And why that one? Because, I start, it's fun teasing you. Neil frowns at me, probably surprised I even admitted to such a thing. I simply shrug at him with a smile. He looks away with a cough. Didn't know you could have fun around me, he murmurs. I'm just about to reply to that until a man comes walking up, seemingly on the lookout for Neil. Oh, Neil, he yells. Neil is suddenly up on his feet, his eyes wide and his back straight. But father, he says with an uncharacteristic stutter. Oh no, it's Neil's father. I feel awkward in his presence. Does he know I'm not really Neil's fiancé? Why did you skip out on the meeting with Harrison? He's been angry and complaining non-stop. You better explain to me, boy. The way Marcus talks to Neil is like he's dealing with a 4-year-old that misbehaved and needs to be reprimanded. Frankly, I'm a bit shocked at the way he's treating Neil. He's completely ignoring my presence as well, like I'm not even worthy of his time. I guess I didn't need to worry about whether or not he knew I was faking it with Neil. Neil hangs his head down and seems to be unable to look his father in the eye. Angela, that troublemaker again. How many times are you going to use her as an excuse? You need to own up to your responsibilities, Neil. You'll never be fit for this kind of work otherwise. I frown at Marcus. Angela is in the room right in front of him. Neil only came because he was worried. He's not even listening to Neil's reasons for abandoning his post. A family emergency is not a valid excuse. Does he even care a relative is in the hospital? Apologies, father. I'll return straight away. I've never seen Neil this compliant and defeated before. Where did all his bite and spunk go? The one that would argue to hell and back. Then again, he was similar during our dinner a week ago. This will be the last time that I'll see you skip out on work. Do it again and I won't hesitate to cut you off. Isn't that the whole reason I pretended to be his fiancé in the first place, so that Neil wouldn't have to work so much? What was the point of doing it in the first place if he's still going to keep Neil on a tight leash? Sitting here, listening to Neil's father berating him like this is infuriating. I know it's not my place to say anything, but boy do I want to. Neil finally turns to me, but his eyes aren't meeting mine. He feels lifeless. I have work. Thanks for taking care of Angela. Have a good day. Together with his father, Neil walks away from me. Wow. Right. I'll see you in the next one. Oh, the continue button's going crazy.